Hello fairy friends, it is Liz. I am back with a very basic, I'm talking beginner, before you even begin working with clay, polymer clay, basic video. You are probably going to hate the sound of my voice. At some point you're going to wonder if you should even be watching this because it's so basic and boring and just probably common sense, but bear with me. The reason that I find this video necessary is 20 years ago when I started in polymer clay, I had been making dolls, but I had just started with this and I didn't have internet. I didn't have videos to look at, tutorials. I didn't have books. And so I learned a lot through trial and error. I just jumped in. So if you see my other tutorials and you just want to jump in, please do. That's how we learn, and that's how I have learned. I am very impetuous and I'm very impatient, but I do know this. Over the years of making and selling my dolls, I have had family and friends who have decided to try their hand at polymer clay, and they've given up and they've been discouraged. And I truly believe that there's a reason for it, and it's not because of what they thought. They have decided that they don't have any talent and they're not creative and they just don't have the skills. Well, guess what? You are just, if you're starting out, you're not used to this medium. You're not used to sculpting. You're not used to this product, and you have some prep things that you can do to make your projects nicer and make you cover more ground more quickly. So I want to share what I've learned and some basic things that are going to keep you from declaring that you don't have talent. You do, and I think anybody can do this if they take the time to prep, even though it's very boring. I'm not going to lie, it's boring. You just want to jump in. Anyway, what you're seeing right here is plastic coated Reynolds kitchen wrap. So we're talking work table right now. We're talking prep, and we will get into tools and we will get into polymer clay. But first, let's talk about preparing our work surface. We need light. I got a light above here. Natural light is best, but if you can't, get a table lamp, whatever you have. Make sure you have some good lighting and you have a clean work surface. I like this because it's bright. I can see if there's any dust or dirt almost immediately. This is plastic coated on one side and it's just regular paper on the other. A lot of my things do double duty, and a lot of times I'll get generic, but I will not get generic on this because I really do like that it's sturdy, and I like that cutter on there. And I am going to jump ahead really quickly to show you how this does double duty. I do tape this down, and I use just regular simple masking tape, and this does double duty too. But back to the paper. This is polymer clay that I've mixed up. And when you get into the polymer clays, you'll probably want to blend some of your own colors. And when you do so, you're going to want to set that aside after you've worked with it, because you get it really warm when you've conditioned it, and sometimes too warm, and it's just really hard to sculpt with when it's kind of falling over and melting, and while you're trying to put in little tiny details, you accidentally smush away another detail that you just worked on. And that's when you'll know that your clay is too warm. So if you use this paper side of this freezer paper, you can wrap this and set it aside before you go to work with it. Because if you've conditioned it, like I said, it's too warm. You need to set that aside. So the paper does two things. It keeps it clean and tidy until you're ready while it's cooling. And also, sorry for all the crackling, this has been sitting for a while, and I think you can see that some of the oils in the clay has been leached out. That helps big time. Do not have on brand new clothing with dark colors. T-shirts, jeans, those are some of the worst offenders for, I don't know how it happens. You just move and some of those fibers release into the air and your clay is like a magnet. It's like give me some of that fiber, I want to ruin your project. And the softer it is, the more it seems to collect in there. So I'm actually wearing a black t-shirt, and I wouldn't normally do that, but it's old. It's an old t-shirt. So you want to come with no fibrous sweaters or new clothing. That will just cause you problems the entire time. Even if you sat perfectly still, fibers are going everywhere. Obviously, wash your hands. I don't wear my rings because that clay will get into them, and also it'll cause issues when I'm sculpting. I also don't really keep long nails, so if you have nails, please consider that might be something of an obstacle. So even though I've washed my hands, I am going to use some hand sanitizer, and I keep some white washcloths at my table. And these are very handy, and you can reuse them. Now, I use this before I start, but after I've handled this clay, I have found that just regular soap and water doesn't really want to get that polymer clay residue off of your hands. This is really the only thing that does. So I do this yet again before I walk away, even if I'm going to sculpt again. So say I go to the restroom or I go downstairs, I always do this. And before I even go into the tools, I want to show you yet another very basic thing. Even if I just use these the day before, I will go ahead and clean them. And I do use a paper towel for this, but you can use the terry cloth. Anyway, I go ahead and wipe each and every one of these, and I keep them in a glass container. I'll even wipe out this. How I start every day is I lay down my paper, I lay out my tools, I wipe out this with my paper because lint and dust have landed in here. My house is 100 years old. I don't know what the heck. It's just a dusty old house. The dust comes everywhere. So I individually wipe each one of these like I'm going to do a surgery, and I put them back in here. So I'm going to go over tools really quickly with you. The reason I'm not going to spend a lot of time on them is because they're very specific. They're ones that I like specifically. If you get into this, you are going to have your own favorites that you prefer. Believe me, you will. These are suggestions so that you can get started. First off, I always keep some scrap clay, and I have a few different sizes of sewing needles. They always go right back in here. I always have toothpicks on hand, and that's just right there. I always keep a little roll of scrap clay, because yet again, even though I've washed my hands, I've used the hand sanitizer, anytime I get up from the table, I always go ahead and do this again. And this gets up any last little thing. And also you can use it kind of as a little lint roller for your work surface as you're working. Okay, so we've already cleaned these with the Windex. This is a rubber tipped sculpting tool. I bought this at an art store, and I will show you what it looked like. Here, this is playing a role again. I wrapped it in this because, let me show you how they came. Now I don't use these, but I can show you the brand and what it's saying that it is. It says Color Shaper, and these all say firm. So this doesn't, it's not floppy. And that's the consistency that I like when I'm using it. Problem being is that color was coming up, getting on my hands, and then getting in my clay. So if you notice, whatever tool that you're using, especially if it's like something that you found around the house that's not even meant for polymer clay, if you're noticing it getting sticky and tacky or the color coming up, don't throw it away. Wrap it in this, and I've rewrapped this several times. I've removed this and rewrapped it. So that's what that tape is. And here's another one that I wrapped. This is a small Stylus tool, and it had a paint on that was coming off, even though it's wood. So there are those two, and this is really good for doing all sorts of different details. I found that very beneficial. This is a larger, basically the same idea, only larger. This was a set. that had different removable tips. And I didn't like the other set. A lot of times I'll buy the set just for one piece. Again, I'm cheap, but if I got my eye on something and I know that I'm going to need it, I will get it. I did give the other ones a try, but they didn't work, and I didn't like the handle. So I actually made this out of scrap clay. And the tip is still removable. And I use that a lot. This one, everyone will recognize. It's an Exacto Blade or craft knife, and this is perfect. I use this every time whenever I get, we were talking about trying to keep that lint off. Guess what? It still happens, no matter what you've done. The Exacto Blade is really good for shaving off those pieces. So let's just pretend that this isn't scrap clay and it's not completely riddled with little fibers, and we just have one little bit, and that's what that does. And if you notice that your blade is getting dull, you'll notice that you're not able to shave a little bit, it means that your blade is getting dull. Please be careful with these. I hurt myself all the time with it, even though I've been doing this for a long time. And there are different shapes of these blades, but this is the shape that I prefer. But, you might find something that you like. After these are cleaned, like I said, I put them back in here. This one always goes with the blade down, and they do have covers for these, but because I'm using it again and again throughout sculpting process, I just put it downwards in the cup so it doesn't cut me. This is a makeshift tool. This is a cuticle pusher, and I've used this for a lot of different things. Another makeshift tool is just this crochet hook, and it is a G, I think. And you want to look at the end. This is the end that I use. I know it's basically the same concept of the large stylus, but has a little bit of a different shape. But you'll want to be careful. I have another crochet hook of a different size here, and I weeded this out of my sculpting tool list because it has a seam there, and I don't like that. That messes up my sculpting. This one doesn't. So if you're going to kind of go on what I'm talking about as far as tools, and you go to look for crochet hook, examine it. I know it seems very nitpicky, but it really pays off to be nitpicky on these things. Here's another crochet hook or tatting needle, also teensy tiny, the same Stylus idea, sorry. And I use that tip, but I also use this as like a metal roller. I actually probably use this end more. So there's another one. This is an acrylic roller. I'll get this out of the way. This I got at Hobby Lobby, and I think it's Kato brand. There's a lot of Kato products. I think this blade is one too. This is really handy with rolling out your clay and getting it thin. If you don't have a pasta machine or you just need to do something really quick, this is perfect for that. I don't always use this, but it's just handy for whenever I do. And like I said, this is a Kato blade. Please, 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 please. This is so sharp. Be so careful, and a lot more cleanly. This is an actual sculpting tool, but this is more of a traditional sculpting tool. This is for people who do the sculpting where they take away from a big slab of clay. And I use this end of it. It does have this. I hardly ever need this in. This was in a set that was at Hobby Lobby, and I've seen them at other places near the polymer clays. It might even be at Walmart. I think I saw these at Walmart. I think it comes in a set of 4 or 5 different double-ended tools, and I bought them because they were cheap. When you're just starting out, you're trying to see what you like and what works, and you think you have to have all these things. Well, guess what? I threw away all the other ones. They're completely useless to me. I haven't used them. I did keep them in my maybe cup that I have that I might end up using, but then I ended up throwing them away because I didn't need them. That doesn't mean that you will. Maybe you'll buy the set and they'll all be useful. Another handy supply and tool to have on hand is aluminum foil, and I usually get the cheaper brand because it's thinner and it's easier to shape and work with. So for larger pieces that I'm working on, I will make a core with the aluminum foil, and I'll go ahead and wrap that with the masking tape before I add the clay on. There are a couple of reasons, actually 3 that I can think of right off the bat, of why you would want to have an aluminum core inside of the piece that's this thick. The first and foremost is for integrity. When you go to bake this in the oven, the thicker the clay is, the more likely it is to come out cracked. I don't know exactly why it happens, can't explain it to you, but if the piece is too thick, the oven gods do not like it. You'll open up, your timer will go off, and you will be so sad. You won't be if you use a core. So that's the first reason, so it doesn't ruin your work. Second is you save on clay. Even though this is a scrap clay project, guess what? I have more scrap clay now because this isn't solid. The third reason is for weight. Sometimes a piece can get terribly heavy and you don't need it to be. Now, this is the base, so it actually would be nice for the base to be heavy, so this wouldn't be top heavy. But sometimes you don't want the piece to be heavy, and this does lighten it up. Another use for the aluminum foil is the inside of my larger doll's heads. This one, not a candidate because it's small enough that it doesn't need anything inside. But for this doll, this character doll that it's about 14 inches, the head is very large, and I do want to cut down on the weight of it, and I don't want to have any baking mishaps. I don't want to take that out to discover all of my work is ruined by a cracked face. So the aluminum is very good for the skull. In addition to the aluminum skull that you create for your sculpture, you do need a couple of other things, which I'm not going to go over right now, but I will just briefly show you. That is not the entire armature. You do need something for the arms and legs, and I will go over that. This is fencing wire, and these are needle nose pliers, and these are just wire cutters. And I will make an entire video just on making the armature, but for now we are going to move on to the polymer clay itself. If you are still here with me, you are an absolute champ. I did warn you it would be tedious. I told you it would be boring. You probably just didn't realize how boring it would be. Anyway, thanks for hanging in there. We're actually getting on to the polymer clay part of this polymer clay video. A lot of people start with Super Sculpey beige, and that is fine. It is what I use, but to be perfectly honest, I don't use it just as it is. I mix it with other clays for different colors and different skin tones. But you can use it just as it is. It does seem a little bit expensive at first. $14.99 seems a lot to me because I remember when it was $10. It's just slowly gone up over the years, and I expect it to continue. At Hobby Lobby, it's this price. They do have sales if you're going to buy more than one box. Buy it when it's 30% off. If you just need one box, don't buy it on sale. Use the 40% online coupon for a regular priced item and you'll get more off on it. Other places do carry it. Joann's, that's almost next door to Michael's, or right next door to Hobby Lobby, carries it, but theirs is $16.99 for some reason. And they do have a 40% off coupon. I just don't shop there a lot, so I don't know if that 40% off one item is like their standard, like Hobby Lobby is. Anyway, if none of these stores sound familiar to you, you might not be in North America, please know you can get your clay online. I do. I buy a lot of clay online and I get a deal that way. So don't give up if you can't find it. Some craft stores offer the white, plain white Sculpey. I don't recommend it. It seems tempting because it's cheaper and it's readily available. I feel like it's going to cause you to have some issues because it doesn't hold the detail as well as this does. Okay, so you found the clay that you want. You've gotten your deal on it. You get home only to discover that while it was on the shelf, someone's opened the box and stuck their dirty, nasty fingernail into it. Or worse yet, they've dropped it on the floor. Probably some kid, and the mom's run over and is like, "Bobby, I told you not to be getting into stuff." And so she shoves it back on the shelf. So even though you've prepared your workplace, you cleaned your tools, you scrubbed your hands like a surgeon, you suddenly realize you have more work to do. And it's just when you're getting really anxious and excited to get started. Sometimes the clay comes out perfectly fine, but I'm just preparing you for worst case scenario. Sometimes in the factory debris gets in it and you can see it just below the surface. So that's when you get your Exacto Blade out again and you clean out all of the debris, because that debris will rear its ugly head. It will come back to haunt you. Maybe if you just pretend the clay is clean and you fold it up and just pretend it's not there, maybe you'll get lucky, but one day you won't. It'll be in an area where you can't afford for it to have a blemish. It'll be very noticeable. You'll have wasted all that time sculpting, and you'll have wasted your money on the clay. Well, that'll do it, fairy friends. Thank you for spending some time with me. That is part 1. Believe it or not, I have tons more information that I'd like to share with you, and we still won't actually be working on a project. It will be part 2 of just beginner basics, getting ready to sculpt. There will be tutorials where we actually complete projects, but for now I have another part, a whole bunch more information for you, such as working in sections so that you can save your work and go on to another part. We will be testing the integrity of our clay before we get started. It's very important that we make sure that we are baking it at the correct time and temperature. And for my larger sculptures, we will go over briefly. It might require its very own tutorial, but we'll go over briefly on how I create armatures for my bigger sculpts. And I will go over a little bit on my regular size fairies in the next part. So please stay tuned for part 2. I'm actually already working on it. Hopefully it will be up today, could be tomorrow. If you found value in this video or you like my videos, please consider subscribing if you haven't already. And if you'd like to get alerts when new videos pop up, hit the bell button. I ask that only because supporting artists like me and others by subscribing and commenting, even when you're not purchasing from an artist, you are supporting them and you are keeping them visible on social media. And you can look in the description for all of my links to my website and my social media. When you like and subscribe, it's free for you to do and it helps us out a lot. So I'll thank you in advance and I hope you have a magical day, and I'll see you in part 2.